It is my absolute pleasure to introduce our speaker this evening. Deaver is a big package. She is a life coach, speaker, and visual artist. Deanna was born in Romania, spending her formative years in a communist and then post-communist developing country offered her a direct understanding of the effects that abuse, fear, shame, hunger can have on human dignity. Deanna started her studies in 2000 in psychosociology at university in Romania. In 2008, here in Charleston, she began her apprenticeship as an emotional health coach. Her coaching process focuses on deep exploration, understanding, and compassion. Having personally explored the power of emotional healing and making it an ongoing process and habit, Deanna is naturally very compassionate. She uses her formal training and unique approach to create a healing partnership with each of her clients. In her coaching and speaking, she addresses topics around eating issues, self-valuing, healing childhood trauma, women's empowerment, and many others. Deanna earned a Bachelor of Professional Studies in Applied Communication and is currently enrolled in a master's and PhD program in depth psychology at Pacifica Graduate Institute, and she will specialize in Jungian and archetypal studies. It is obvious right away when you meet this woman that she is a can-do person who sees possibilities everywhere. If you have searched information about her online, you know that she is curious, she's always learning, and always loving to share what she knows and her skills, her healing ways. I met Deanna about 3 years ago when she joined the CJS board, and if you found or follow CJS online on Facebook or the website, it was Deanna who drew you in. Her skills and passion for sharing Jung's work have been absolutely critical to this organization over the last few years, so we really, really appreciate the work that she's done. And much of our growing audiences, I think, really can be attributed to her work. Deanna and I have bonded over Jungian topics, and I never feel like I get to hear enough from her. So I'm really excited to turn over the microphone to Deanna Deaver. Help me welcome Deanna Deaver.
There's nothing like a good girlfriend to give you a pep talk right before an important talk. All right, let's see. So I kind of have to stay here for you to hear me. All right. Hello? Hello. This is what children do, right? Kind of stare you down and give you a big smile. I'd like to start by inviting you to take a deep breath, relax for the next hour and a half. My invitation will be to take the hat of adult off and put the hat of a child on. Children know how to sit in a chair and make it look comfortable, so don't hesitate to change your position. Stretch your legs, slump your shoulders. The teacher's not here today, so everybody's free to have fun and to relax. Let's see. I will prompt you today to, we'll do some exercises, but mainly I will invite you to tap into your playfulness and your mindfulness. I may ask you to get curious, to take a guess. We'll do a drawing exercise. We'll play, smile at each other, and most importantly, connect, if it feels comfortable for you, with the childlike part of you. So yeah, let's see if we can put our childhoodie on. All right, good. Now you're fully here. So my first question would be, what brought you in? Right, the title is A Return to Joy. So a part of you, something inside of you wants to return to joy. Perhaps something in you is calling you to experience more aliveness, more playfulness, maybe humor, maybe lightheartedness. There's no wrong answer, but I think it's fun to be aware of exactly what you came here to find today. In our media, commercials, advertising, entertainment, we as humans are teaching each other that aging is not cool, right? Wrinkles are not cool, old people are not cool. Aging is perhaps one of the most unwelcomed side effects of being alive, right? None of us are immune to it. We all experience it and observe how it changes our bodies, how it can change our minds. Sometimes it changes the way we dream about the future. And with all this aging talk, there's also a part of us that I think we can tap into and become aware of any time that doesn't age, that remains somehow untouched by the passing of time, that is perpetually young. And Carl Jung called this part of us an archetype, the archetype of the child. And he believed that we all have it as human beings. It belongs to the collective unconscious. So today, I'd like to define some of the elements of the inner child. I'm trying to get a grasp of what is the inner child. When I first heard this topic, I was like, oh, there's some little kid inside of me? That's weird, okay. Address the symptoms and challenges of being disconnected or feeling disconnected from this young part of us. I'd like to discuss the purpose and the benefits of reintegrating this part of us through self-parenting. And we'll also, after the break, we'll have some fun with some tools, practical tools. This is what I do with my clients. I love to give you something you can take home and play with when you're not surrounded by a bunch of strangers. So as we move through these 5 phases of the lecture, I will offer some experiential prompts. This is something that you can actively be engaged in, or if it feels intimidating, you can pass. No one's going to pry anything out of you. But it could be a lot of fun. So I'm going to invite the child part of you to come forward. Fun is allowed today. Like I said, the teacher's not here. So what is the inner child? The inner child is the part of ourselves that is vulnerable, sensitive, needy sometimes, almost always adorable, pure, sweet, and naturally charming, right? Children don't have to pretend that they're cute. They are cute. It is the part of us that wants to take home every puppy and every kitten, that wants to finish the box of Oreos in one sitting, that can make an airplane out of a piece of paper, and can recognize the shape of a dragon and a cloud. The inner child, or the child archetype, represents these qualities in us: playfulness, joy, imagination, creativity, and wonder. And this part of us is waiting for us to spend time with them. That's all that children want. It's like, can you just look at me? Can you just spend time with me? Speaking of wonder, I love that children can look at a Rolex and scum off the floor with the same fascination and wonder. And sometimes I like to tap into that, especially when I work with people. The inner child is also the part of us that wants to cry when we're really tired, right? When we've had a long day and it's a red light and I almost come to tears. It's the part of us that wants to touch the fluffy white beard of the man we just met because it looks really soft. And it's our ability to make a microphone out of a hairbrush. Jung also talked about the importance of the child to our potential future. I think I missed that one. I'm going down here. The child motif is what makes us capable of transformation. Jung believed that the function of this archetype is to keep us linked with our past, our roots, to keep us connected with our core of innocence and vitality. And what I like to think about when I think about my inner child is, when did my inner child start? Was it when I had my very first heartbeat? Can you think of that moment when you were in your mom's belly and you went from beginning to turn human to having your very first heartbeat? How were we before we were shamed for the very first time? Before someone told us to shut up for the very first time? That's the inner child. That's that pure love, pure presence, pure innocence before we experienced any loss, any holdback, any pain. I'd like to invite you to tap into that for a moment. Today we're trying to bring joy and vitality back, so let's think about what you liked to do as a child. I'm going to invite you to maybe close your eyes or keep them open, whatever. But how did you like to see the hours pass? Did you play with your hands? Did you like to look at things or touch things or smell things? Which of your senses were you engaging the most? What did you do for play? Were you making up stuff? Were you using your imagination? What made you happy? Was it someone looking at you and interacting with you? Were you building a castle? How much of that are you doing today? How much of that are you bringing into your life today? That's my first question of the day. Some of you may have a really easy time connecting with these memories. And as you think about them, you may feel your lips curl up. Others may have a hard time accessing these memories. But I think we all can, I hope we all can better understand and the part of us that represents the inner child and how it shows up in us at this time, and where there might be some areas where we can make more room for them. So now that we've looked at maybe a definition or a better understanding of what the inner child is, I'd like to look at some of the symptoms and the challenges that show up when we disconnect from this part of us. Before I do that, we're going to do the first experiential, which is to get more connected with your inner child. And for that purpose, I have brought a basket of toys. So we're going to pass it around, grab the first one that attracts to you, and do the thing I did when I came up. Just look at the person next to you and give them a smile. So how do we know if we're disconnected from our inner child? I didn't even know what it was before. Now, how do I know if I have it? We have a relationship, I'm aware of it. The first symptom that I like to mention is noticing the lack of these qualities that I mentioned in our lives. Vitality, energy, joy, sensory engagement. Children are very sensory. They like to touch things, smell things. Creativity, imagination. We generally are missing these if we are disconnected from our child. We may have an annoying sense that something is missing. Even though many of us have never met their inner child, we feel their absence. We feel disconnected from something and we can't tell quite what that is. I call it the inner empty nester syndrome. I have an empty nest, but I never had a child. How can that be? Or my children are in the house, but I still feel like something's missing. Or my children have left the house. I'm a real nester in my house, but I'm also an empty nester inside. we can observe that we have become unchildlike and artificial. There's a sense of loss of enchantment with life when we're disconnected from our inner child. There's no sense of wonder. Nothing touches us anymore. Cynicism and defensiveness replace the openness and friendliness children approach strangers with. Like, I don't feel safe. Who's that weird person? No, we can't be friends. Creativity is hard to access. Planning and structure replace spontaneity. So I need to know exactly what I'm going to do. I can't allow myself to get lost. I need to be in control. A second symptom of the disconnection with the inner child is inner conflict. I'm experiencing a lot of inner conflict. As Jung described it, when we resist the inner child, we come in conflict with our original unconscious and instinctive state. Paradoxically, that's where our power is, our vitality and collective unconscious wisdom, that's where they come from. We experience an aversion to and disgust with the neediness in ourselves and others. So, oh, he's needy, don't hang out with him. Oh boy, she wants to hang out with me too much. So we have this aversion to neediness in ourselves. We're not allowed to be human. We're not allowed to need when we're disconnected to our inner child. We may exhibit an attitude of resistance to the part of us that's really honest and upfront, that doesn't feel in control, that doesn't have all the answers. What? That is sensitive and needy. In fact, most people that I work with usually want to turn this off when I first talk to them about the inner child. They say, okay, how do I fix this? How do I make it go away? Make it be gone. We act with our inner children as the parent who is embarrassed by their child and needs to send them off to their room or sometimes lock them in a dark closet. Oh, you're having a temper tantrum and you're crying? Okay, let me put you away. I don't want to feel you. I don't want to see you. I don't want to respond to you. And to bring compassion to the way that we parent ourselves, it's almost always inherited. So how could we parent ourselves other than the way we were parented, right? So if my mom told me that I have a horrible voice, I believed her. And so now if part of me wants to sing, what am I going to say to myself? Maybe I shouldn't because I have a horrible voice. So some of the voices of our parents become internalized, and that's what I call internalized oppression, especially to those needy parts of us that are totally human. Maybe as children we weren't allowed to be childlike. We were told to stop fidgeting, stop giggling, stop feeling so deeply. Why are you making such a big deal of this? Stop asking so many questions. How many times as adults we're afraid to ask a question? Quit bothering me. Stop singing. Stop playing. You shouldn't have said that. Or my least favorite, you're such a brat. Sometimes we're not even allowed to speak. Just be quiet. Don't laugh loud, or cry, or be angry. So no feelings, please. I have to give you a personal example. My sister, my parents and I, my family were camping, and my sister and I were giggling at the table, and my dad, for some reason, did not feel like that was appropriate at that time. He was getting frustrated with us. And so he said, stop giggling, and we couldn't. And so then he said, if you can't stop giggling, go over there and laugh. So my sister gets up with the most emphatic body language she could. She stomps over there and she goes, ha 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 ha. So her defiance to my father and her willingness to continue laughing over there made us all laugh. And to me, that's an example of how resourceful and playful children can be. And even when we're told we're not allowed to do something, we'll find a way. But the voices that we heard as children that tried to stop us from being children, sometimes we hear them in our heads, right? They become our inner voices, and they can be painful. They can make it very difficult for us to be alone. Have you noticed how many adults are afraid to be alone? Because that voice is saying, you know, you're such a loser. I can't believe you said that. Or, I can't believe you didn't say anything, right? We have so many scripts. I'm such an idiot. You shouldn't have done that. So a lot of judgment comes from that internalized criticism. Lots of shaming, self-shaming behaviors. As we go through this later, we'll explore some tools for self-parenting that will help us monitor, talk back to these voices, and replace them, create some new voices that can speak for us, especially when we're getting into trouble, and that are more functional. This is part of integrating the child and parenting the child in a mindful way. Quick recap, 2 of the symptoms of being disconnected with our inner child is our lack of vitality and joy and creativity, and the presence of inner conflict. Next, I'd like to talk about how integrating the inner child through self-parenting can restore our life force. But before I do that, I'd like to invite you to do another experiential prompt. One of the delights of childhood is imagination. So who here had an imaginary friend as a child? All right, okay, 1, okay. Do you remember his or her name? Okay, great, so we have a couple of people. So if you had one, let's bring them back. Let's see, what were they? Were they a dragon? Were they a person? Were they a superhero? What was their name? Were they fluffy? I'm gonna bring all of those details back. If you did not have one, how about making up one now? Who would you like to be your imaginary friend? Take a moment to imagine that. What are they? How big are they? What are some features? What's their name? When are they with you? I love to see some of the smiles that are happening as you're seeing the After the break, I'll show you some imaginary friends. Mine's here, by the way. All right, coming back to how reestablishing and nurturing our connection to the inner child can help us. Let's see if we can get the screen back. Jung teaches us that integrating the inner child is crucial to becoming a more complete person. So this is why we want to do it, is part of the individuation process. We make room for, we acknowledge, and we integrate our feelings, our needs, and our wants when we reconnect with our inner child. And we become more whole people. He has a great quote here: in every adult, there lurks a child, an eternal child, something that is always becoming. It is never completed and calls for unceasing care, attention, and education. That is the part of the human personality which wants to develop and become whole. The inner child is a part of us, and when we move from neglecting and punishing it to protecting and nurturing, we function differently. I want you to imagine your inner child for a moment. How well are they taken care of? Are they fed? Are they clothed? Are they dirty? Has someone looked at them recently and played with them? Where are they? Are they in a closet? Are they crying? Are they asking for a hug? Let's talk for a moment about the benefits and effects and the potential changes and challenges of beginning self-parenting this child. Imagine a starving, hurting child. And then imagine them being loved and taken care of. How differently do they look? And if they're a part of us, how differently will we function with this part of us that is used to throwing temper tantrums, now being a delightful and playful child? Well taken care of children are amazing. They fill our hearts with awe and joy, and they invite us to spontaneous laughter. How many videos have we watched on Facebook of completely strange children we've never met before, but they're giggling and we're giggling because they're giggling? Are there some challenges to beginning self-parenting? Yes. Most people don't like the idea of another responsibility. They're like, I already have an outer child. Are you telling me there's another one inside that needs my attention? So there's some resistance. So that's the first challenge. The second one can be some of the wounds from the past, because the child connects us with the parts of us that have been formed across time. Our inner child is connected. We have many inner children that belong to every age and every year. And so some of them may be hurt. Some of them may have watched something or experienced something that was traumatic to them. And of course, first reaction to that is, I don't want to see it. I don't want to deal with it. Get over it. But as we become nurturing and loving to those parts of us that need our attention, it is possible to move through. It is possible to find healing. Otherwise, we're walking around with parts of us that are hurting. So we are not functioning to the highest degree that we can. When we look at this pain that was left unresolved, or maybe it was unacknowledged at that time, maybe a part of us has never been heard about a loss that happened. As we process this pain, we get back to believing that pain can be kissed away, right? When we're children, we go to mom, and mom can kiss our pain away. Emotionally speaking, if I am the mom of my inner child, I can learn that pain can be kissed away again. In this process, we also develop emotional resilience. We can tell our children that we can get through this, that they don't have to be in the closet, that we can cope with the pain, that we can use the pain to learn from it, maybe to contribute to somebody else who might be going through a similar process. We have increased creativity and vitality. That's kind of, I love the image on the left, kind of shows how I want a mom, so I'll draw it and imagine she's holding me. And then here the woman who's already overwhelmed with her outer child. So, yeah. Often when I work with clients on this process, as they begin to parent themselves, there's a lot of trial and error. We need to learn what's working. There's an inquiry process. What are your needs today? That's usually one of the first questions. Conversation begins. But as they go through it and they become more comfortable with it, there's almost always a real and visible transformation in their enthusiasm and hope for life. Most people who begin to integrate their inner child actually begin to look more adorable. They are more playful, and life gets a little bit easier. Their innocence is reborn, and they admit to having outpours of creativity. I've had this before. I painted 5 paintings in one night since we did this, since I embraced my inner child. Or I finished my book, because now we are tapping into the world of fantasy, of imagination, of playfulness. It becomes easier to turn work assignments into games, and Playfulness and concentration bring a completely different energy to things that we used to dread. We also have an increased ability to be more present with our loved ones, including our outer children. And this is what I love about this photo, is that the parents look almost as silly as the child. And so that's 3 children playing. Adults who embrace their inner child also report longer moments of feeling and flow, and they admit to having a more vivid connection with a higher source. It's more comfortable. I'm more trusting now. As their relationship with their inner child becomes more secure, their outer attachments also seem to gain in stability and enjoyment. So, as my inner child feels more loved and safe, I don't have to be as needy and rely so much on others. So my friendships are healthier, my intimate relationships are healthier, I am more comfortable being myself, even if that means being silly. Right, so we'll do a quick recap and then we're probably going to go into a break. We looked at the definition of the inner child, the symptoms of what it feels like to be disconnected from the inner child, and the purpose and the benefits of the integration. Before we break, I'd like to do another exercise, and we have pen and paper. And what I like to invite you to do is to draw a picture or a symbol of the inner child, of your inner child. After the break, we're gonna use this exercise and whatever you draw to learn a little bit about you. You don't have to show anybody if you don't want to. This is gonna be an exercise you can do on your own. I wanna invite you to take the adult cap off, remember, and just have fun drawing. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be a stick figure. But yeah, I'm excited about learning something about you, and we'll pass along the paper and the pens. Thank you for coming back. I see that some of you have brought their inner children this time too. I saw some of them showing drawings and playing with toys. So hope that feels good to you. Curious how it does feel. The second part is going to be tools. It's my favorite part, so we'll be interacting a lot, and I invite you to ask any questions you like to about this process. When I begin work with somebody who wants to integrate their inner child, the first step is to begin having a conversation. It can be, hello inner child. Hello, I'm willing to see you. I'm willing to hear you. And then usually that's a question that follows. As I was working with my inner child, I noticed that there was a lot of emotional sensitivity coming up for me. So I would cry a lot all of a sudden as I started beginning this work. And so I started being concerned. What's wrong with me? Why am I crying? Right? That's the attitude that we have sometimes towards those parts of us that are more vulnerable. And I was in yoga, in savasana, you know, yoga, you do the thing and then you lay down and you have your eyes closed and it's nice Zen music. And again, just tears started flowing down. I didn't know what was happening, so I thought this was my inner child, because little girl who was mopey or tired. I call her sleepy weepy. So I asked a question. I asked, what do you need? And I was blown away by the answers. The answer was, I need parents. And then the second was, I needed to be okay to cry. So I got goosebumps. And I was like, okay, I can do that. So parents, how do we get parents for our inner children? So I have the PPP exercise, Perfect Parent Profile. And the way the Perfect Parent Profile works is I invite people to become aware of how they're parenting right now. So when you are having a childlike moment, how are you reacting to yourself in that moment? Are you frustrated? Are you ashamed of yourself? Are you trying to hide from other people? Or are you compassionate? Are you going into self-care mode right away? Are you able to communicate with others? Hey, I'm having a moment right now. It's going to take me 2 seconds. Give me a chance to connect with my inner child. So one is acknowledging how you are parenting your inner child right now. 2 is thinking about how you were parented. So we're going to observe what worked, right? There are parts of the way we were parented that our parents, that we absolutely love. It really worked. It helped us develop. We felt loved. We felt connected with. So my dad, for instance, he would come home from work, and the days he would bring candy, I felt like he had thought about us. And so he would bring like a little piece of candy, and I would be like, oh, he thought about us, we're important, me and my sister. So that was one way that he let me know that he cared about me. So that providing aspect felt amazing to me. Or my mom, whenever she would make us dessert, she's a great baker. So now dessert is always a way of nurturing myself. So what I'd like to invite you to do as you consider creating your PPP is, what was your mom or your dad? We do a PPP for mom and a PPP for dad. So go mom. I'm going to split the page in 2. I'm going to do mom. What worked about mom? Well, the way she held me when I was crying, or the way she let me finish before responding, the way she tucked me in at night. So we're going to keep little elements like that worked. And then when we think about mom, or whoever was our caregiver, the feminine, what was done that didn't work? Maybe I was punished every time I spilled the milk. Maybe I wasn't allowed to jump in bed. Or whatever was painful or traumatic for you, or, mom never had time to spend time with me because she always worked so much. We're going to use that and create the opposite. Okay, so what was painful for me is not having any quality time with the feminine in my life, the dominant feminine relationship. So what I need is quality time. So we're going to fill in the gaps, because no parent is perfect. Every parent does their best. At least that's what I like to believe. But they're human. And so now we can learn from our parents' mistakes and fill in the gaps. And this is what this quote says: you don't have to parent yourself the way your parents did. If you got punished, you don't have to punish yourself again. We do that a lot. I work a lot with clients on shame and punishment when it comes to mistakes. Some people even ask, please punish me so that I can feel better. So we can redesign this relationship. We can decide how we want to relate to the parts of us that are vulnerable and sensitive. So we do that for mom, and then we do it for dad. And so we write it down. So when I work with clients, we'll write it down, and then as we continue sessions, they might tell me, I went out, I had too many drinks, I missed the interview, I didn't get the raise, I'm such a schmuck, I don't deserve anything, right? We go into those places. And so I pull up the PPP and I say, well, according to your desires, what you created, when you make a mistake, you wish to be embraced. You wish to be encouraged. You wish to be reminded that this is a learning opportunity. And so I hold them up to their promise to their child. This is how I'm going to take care of myself when I'm vulnerable, when I'm down, when I'm crying, when I'm mopey. And so it's a practice. We're not going to be perfect. We might go to the voices in the head first. Part of this process, what almost every child needs, is safety and affirmation. And so the protection part against the voices that tell us we're schmucks because we're human is very important. We need an advocate. John Bradshaw called this championing your inner child. So you become a protector and a provider for your inner child. So when the voice of dad who says you're never going to amount to anything, or a mom who said no one's going to marry you because you don't know how to cook. When that voice says, oh, well, he didn't call back because he didn't like your food, right? You get to talk back. You get to say, no, this is not helpful. This is one of the things that I say back to the voices that torture me. This is not helpful. What I need is you to remind me that I'm lovable because I exist. Just because I was born, for that reason, I am lovable. So there's scripts that we can create based on your particular wounds. And I encourage you to think about some of the voices and some of the messages that are most painful to you, and create scripts that can replace. This is replacing the voice in the head. If the voice in the head is an oppressor, a dictator, we can make the voice in the head to be a loving mother, a loving grandmother. So what if I'm at work and I'm stressed out and I can't tap into my inner mother? Sometimes I'll call into the inner grandmother. So for me, that's a part of me that I've also nurtured and connected with. Her name is Grace. So I name these parts, by the way. And so when the mom is overwhelmed, I'm like, Grace, I need you to kick in and take my crying inner child and babysit her for 2 hours. And I always tell my inner child when I have to postpone care, when I have to postpone taking care of her, I say, I will be back. I will be back this evening, and I promise for 45 minutes it's going to be just you and me. And so it's quality time with a part of me that is tired that day, that maybe was told something she didn't like to hear. So it becomes this relationship, the more you practice it, the more complex and resourceful it becomes. And there are moments when maybe the human part of me cannot come up with any grace or any parent that can access, the kindness and the compassion that I need in that moment. So then I go to the ultimate parent, which is my higher source. So we have a lot of resources. And in that moment, as Jungians, we believe in the collective unconscious. So I request for all the love and all the compassion in the world to open a small portal to me in that moment, so that I can be loving and compassionate to me in that moment, even though I'm tired and I can't find the right thing to say to my inner child. May all the grandmothers in the world give me a hint on how I can love myself in this moment, so that I'm not the oppressive voice of my dad or my mom. Any questions on the PPP? Okay. Anybody wants to share something? Maybe one feature? Let's do mom really quick. One feature that is important to you to have on a feminine side nurturing. Yeah, throw it out there. Listening. Awesome. Thank you. Anybody else? Validation. Awesome. Mm-hmm. Honesty. Ooh, got goosebumps on that one. Warmth. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Affirmation, I will always love you.
Nice. I'll always be there. Great. I'd write that down as one of the things that your inner child may need to hear on a regular basis. At first, our inner children who maybe we have neglected our whole lives may not believe that you will champion them forever. They may fear that they will be abandoned again. So that might be one of the scripts that empower you to say, there is nothing you can do that will make me leave you. Yes?
No criticism, no judgment, and absolute unconditional love.
I like that. So to keep these in positive, when you said no criticism, what would you replace that with to have a positive format? Instead of criticism, how would you like to be received?
Well, unconditional love gets it from you.
Gotcha. So it includes those two. And I heard acceptance here too. So for you, the opposite of criticism is acceptance. That's for me too. Yeah.
How do you turn this around when you have a mother that wants to be?
I'm trying to think where to go next. maybe recognizing what our first reaction is to our inner child. So we know when we encounter something that we're scared of, there are the 4 F's, right? Freeze, fear, fight, flight, and facade. So that's the 4 ways that we can react to each other. How do you react to your inner child when you're having an emotional reaction that is maybe out of proportion with what's happening? You know, that's maybe an inner child having a temper tantrum. Do you fight? Do you become louder? Do you freeze? Do you facade? Oh, I'm good. All good. So I recently had this experience. I was in a car with a friend and I got a text message that was really upsetting. And I couldn't. Something triggered in me and I started crying. And my friend was still in the beginning stages of friendship and she's looking at me and I'm crying. And I looked at her and I realized that this is looking strange to her. I'm usually okay with emotions. I'm an emotional health coach. If I wasn't, that would be strange. So I said, hey, I just got a text. This is scary to me, letting you know I'm going to be okay. I just need 2 seconds to breathe through this. And she just sat there and gave me the space, and then I was okay. But that was one way I showed up for my inner child and didn't have to throw her in the closet. I didn't have to facade that she's not there. I could be honest with the person in front of me and tell them what's going on. And she told me later that she learned a lot about how to react to herself when she may have a moment like that. Now, what do we do when somebody comes to us with their inner child? Right? So inner children are scary, especially if we have not gained the security in our relationship with our inner child. And so all of a sudden I'm with my friend or with my boyfriend or with my wife, and they show up in the child, and maybe they're having a temper tantrum, and the things that are saying are not adult-like. So what do we do with that? And I like to imagine a child coming to me. Am I going to shame the child? Where's your mother? Why didn't you come here? You know, why are you here by yourself? Don't react like that, right? Again, compassion can be the first reaction. It takes some practice with ours. And calling for the parent. We can look at the person across from us, realize that they're in the child, and call for the parent to come forth. And remind them that they do have this powerful, balanced, centered part in them. And we call for them to come out. Any questions?
Can you give an example of that, please?
Yes. So I facilitate a group once a week. And so we sit in around the corner and there's a lot of sharing. And sometimes someone will start crying. And that's their inner child, the vulnerable part of them, which is incredibly courageous to show that. And somebody else from across the table will intervene and try to rescue that child. So that means I'm going to take your child and take care of them, because that's what my impulse is, right? And so one way I try to remedy that situation, kind of arbitrate is a better word, is that I invite people to ask questions as opposed to make statements. So I'm crying, and maybe my instinct is to rescue you. Everything's going to be okay. Why are you crying? Right? I'm coming to your rescue. First, we can just hold space, right? Give them. But if we see that, you know, they're really getting lost in their inner child, we could always just ask them a question and say, how do you feel about this? The outcome of this? Is this going to be okay for you? And that's kind of them tapping into their power. So it depends on the situation and the question. But is that helpful? Maybe. Let me think if I have a better example. It's really warm in here. Do we have AC? Or the fans? Everybody's... Okay. Let me think of a better example. I've had some of this in my personal life recently, so I'm trying to be mindful of my example. Mm-hmm. Let me sit with that, and I'll come back to you. Yes?
May I try to give an example? May I try to give an example for it?
Sure.
Okay. I deal with, I think, a lot of people's inner child where I work in the military, and I have a lot of people who are like 18, 19 years old. And I get a lot of inner children coming to me. And sometimes it's playful, and we sort of acknowledge the playfulness, be a little bit playful with them and that. But sometimes the bratty kind of feeling of, well, are you an adult right now? Are you a child? Where are you right now? Just sort of being with that, accepting it, and not sort of pushing away this kid who's coming to you. And being with them in that moment with who they are. And being playful or being stern or being whatever it is that person needs when they manifest.
Yeah, it's a little tricky. I'll think about it. I'll get back to you.
Especially with the inner child sitting on a 17-year-old.
Yeah,
It's very tricky.
yeah.
I think I more respond or react in wanting to be the parent.
Right.
And then what I'd really like to get to is to that point that what I think you're trying to describe, and that's how do you get that person to parent themselves?
Well, you can't always, but you can invite them to. And that's the finessing part, is depending on the person, depending on the relationship, depending on the topic. If they're going through a severe loss or they're going through a very traumatic trigger, there's nothing we can do. It's like sitting with an adult who has a child who's throwing a temper tantrum, right? If you, as my friend, come to me with a 3-year-old that's throwing themselves on the floor, there's nothing I can do, because there's nothing you can do. We're just going to sit there, and the child is going to go through their experience, right? So sometimes it's like, hey, how you doing? Good, how you doing? Hey, my child has been crying for 15 minutes. Do you have any tips for that? Right? So we bring our inner children to each other, but we come in our adult. So hey, I'm coming to you as my adult, telling you that I'm struggling right now. Do you have any tips? Because you have kids too, right? So this is what mothers do. It's like we go to each other and we exchange tips. And so that's the best way to show up when your inner child is triggered. And if you're with someone who's already struggling, they're doing their best. It's like the mother in the airplane, right? With the 3-year-old that's crying. They're doing already their best to quiet down that child. And sometimes we just have to be there for them. There is no solution. But it really depends on the situation. All right, so we did a couple of things. You got a toy. And I said, pick the first thing that that draws to you, the first thing you see. And I want you to look at your toy for a second. And I'd like for you to observe it. Maybe it's an animal, maybe it's something soft and fluffy. And I'm curious if there's something about your inner child that you can learn based on your selection. I saw a giggle over there. Can I ask you, sir in blue? Would you be, not yet, you? I saw you giggle. Hi. No, you're a friend. Yeah. I was just noticing that it matches your shirt. So what? Your inner kid likes blue. Awesome. All right. Anybody else? What'd you learn? Any hints? Yes?
I think I like to play, my inner child likes to play different roles.
Nice.
A hat. And I was like, well, it's like a different role to play, and literally putting on a new hat, then figuratively
Yeah.
putting on a new hat.
I hope that's not the adult hat, though.
I mean, I don't wear a hat. What do I do? Whoa. I don't want to do no hats.
Awesome. Anybody else? Okay. So we did a drawing. Let's take a look at your drawing. I'd like for you to take a look at your drawing and guess how old you are. So I asked you to draw your inner child. How old is your inner child in this drawing? I'm going to invite you to get curious as to why he or she came up. What he or she may be here to tell you. What happened to you when you were that age? What were you needing when you were that age? Yes. Yes. So our intuition is one of the most powerful gifts we have, especially in the feminine body. And guessing is one of the aspects of the inner child. We can be playful, right? We don't have to know. We don't have to have certainty. So take a guess. We don't have to know. Let's say it's sadness. Oh. Are you able to make space for that sadness at this time in your life? Yeah? Cool. Well, one of the questions I like to offer you to sit with as you experience your sadness is, what are you here to teach me? Hi, sadness. Welcome. Have a seat. What are you here to show me about myself and my life right now? What are you here to teach me?
Yeah, but that's the past life, so there is no sadness now. But the inner child is sad. So it keeps coming up. When I meditate, this is right in my reality. I don't know, what do you want? So I don't know.
What do you want? I like that question.
But I'm not sad. I thought I do. But she keeps appearing.
And yet here, you're not sad, and yet you are. Or the part of you is. A simple question that works is, tell me more. Oh, the inner child shows up, they're sad, tell me more. Just let them see what they have to offer you. They get chatty after a little bit. Okay. So observing your drawing, you're kind of tapping into the age that's coming up, what was happening in your life at that time, what might be some emotional needs that inner child part of you had at that time, and how it's not a coincidence, right? It's a synchronicity that it came up today. So what about that time in your life is reflecting what's happening in your life now? What is being asked of you? Again, curiosity and openness. As we prepare to close, I am going to show you a few more slides. When we pay attention to our inner children, they become incredibly delightful. They fill our life with love and creativity. They are not afraid to love themselves. They are not afraid to recognize something beautiful about them. They're not afraid to write themselves a Valentine's Day card. My inner child sometimes makes me go to Harris Teeter and give her a cake. And then she'll write, "Great job, Deanna, I love you," on it. And I let her. Sometimes she asks me to buy flowers for myself, and I do. And it feels really loving Because if my best friend would buy me flowers, why can't it be just as meaningful if I am? So they'll teach us how to take care of ourselves. They'll teach us what's meaningful to us, what delights us. They will teach us how to eat ice cream and enjoy every single bite. Lastly, this is Bear, the kid, and this is the Black Panther. And the Black Panther is Bear's imaginary friend. Bear is a real kid, and so is Black Panther, of course. But I don't know if you know Robert Lang Gallery. Bear is Robert Lang's child, and I'm sharing this with his permission. I want to read a little bit about it. Let's see if I can do this. Okay, so for the past year and a half, Bear has constantly talked about his imaginary friend and presumed spirit animal, the black jaguar. My bad. Sorry, jaguar. We don't know where the idea of the black jaguar came from, but he mentions him on a daily basis. His father tried to digitally render an image of the two together based on Bear's description. Dad, the black jaguar's head touches the ceiling, and he's bigger than your truck. I love picturing him walking through the day with this beautiful creature at the side. So this brings me back to your imaginary friend. Anybody wants to share about them? I asked you to imagine him today or bring him back. Her? Yes.
Oh, I just wanted to comment on the concept of the black jaguar as his imaginary friend, Charles. In South American shamanism, the jaguar is the guardian spirit.
Oh, fun.
The space
Mm.
around the shaman's work.
Ooh, that gave me goosebumps. So I know that kind of gives me a hint of that safety need for this child. Yeah. Anybody? Yes?
My imaginary friend's name, she did not exist until tonight.
Yay!
Her name is Phoebe. Phoebe has red hair and sort of this plaid, pink and white little plaid dress that's kind of dirty. And she's always available to play. And she always wants to play outside. And she never gets an attitude.
I like her.
Decides not to be my friend.
Okay.
So I experienced that as a
Uh-huh.
junior high. Was
Mm-hmm.
one day you're in and then you're not out, you're out the next day.
Mm-hmm.
But Phoebe's not like that.
Okay.
She shows up and she's delighted to see me.
Where is she right now?
She's outside and she's got mud on her shoes and she really is ready to have an adventure.
Okay. All right. She's patiently waiting for you. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. My inner child is delighted right now. It's like, oh, we got a Phoebe. Yay. Anybody else? Yes.
Can characters in a novel be considered your imaginary friends?
Can they?
To me, they can, because they get me all excited about playing with them all the time.
Fantastic. Do you have one in mind?
The main character.
Of which novel? We don't tell? Okay. You keep him secret. Awesome. Yes.
So, growing up, I discovered an entire imaginary land. It was the kingdom of Darfina.
Ooh.
And so, my imaginary friends growing up actually were an entire kingdom. And
Nice.
it was, because I was the first to make it through a labyrinth, that was the first human to make it through the labyrinth, they made me their queen. So I was Queen Jennifer of the kingdom of Darfina. So I'm excited to go visit them.
Yay! They will welcome you. Awesome. Okay, we'll take one more. Anybody else? Okay. as I prepare to close, I want to reassure you that your inner child work doesn't have to be gruesome, doesn't have to be extensive, doesn't have to take you away from other things. Your inner child needs maybe 5 to 10 minutes a day. Maybe it's a conversation, maybe it's, tell me more. What do you need today? What do you want? Which toy did you like and why? Tell me more about you. Where should we go visit? When in the past do I have to go visit? So see if you can make room. See if you can make room 5-10 minutes for this relationship. And also, as you keep making room, see how much magic, how much fantasy, how much creativity, how much energy, how much joy, spontaneity, and humor start coming back into your life. And how some of those pains that have been there for a long time start falling down. Thank you so much.